tonight's episode of Nightly Knowledge, where history whispers its secrets in the gentle darkness. I'm your host, and I'm delighted you've chosen to spend this quiet evening with us, exploring the fascinating stories that shaped our world. Here at Nightly Knowledge, we take pride in being one of the few channels committed to authentic, well-researched history. Every fact you'll hear tonight has been carefully verified and sourced from credible historical records. We believe that true stories are far more captivating than fiction, and we honor that truth by presenting only proven, documented events from our past. As always, you'll find all our sources listed in the description below. We encourage you to explore them if any topic sparks your curiosity. Our commitment to accuracy means you can trust what you hear, whether you're learning something new or simply letting these gentle stories guide you toward peaceful sleep. In about 10 minutes, we'll transition to a black screen to help those of you settling in for the night. The narration will continue uninterrupted, allowing you to close your eyes and let history's quiet voice carry you through the hours ahead. If you find comfort in these carefully crafted stories, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you this peaceful journey through time. Now, let's begin tonight's gentle voyage into the past, where each fact has been chosen to soothe your mind and enrich your understanding of the remarkable world we've inherited. Let us begin our journey with one of the most legendary places in the history of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria. In the gentle dawn of civilization, on the sunlit shores of the Mediterranean, there once stood a city that became a beacon for scholars, poets, and thinkers from every corner of the known world. Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, quickly blossomed into a center of learning and culture, unmatched in its grandeur and ambition. At the heart of this city was the Library of Alexandria. Imagine a vast, serene complex filled with endless scrolls and manuscripts, where the air was thick with the quiet rustle of parchment and the soft footsteps of philosophers. The library was more than a building. It was a dream made real, a place where the sum of human knowledge could be gathered, preserved, and shared. The library's origins are shrouded in the mists of time, but historians believe it was established during the reign of Ptolemy Soter, a successor of Alexander the Great, around the early 3rd century BCE. Its mission was simple yet bold: to collect all the world's books. Ships arriving at Alexandria's busy harbor were searched for scrolls, which were then copied by skilled scribes. The originals were often kept, and the copies returned to their owners, a testament to the city's hunger for wisdom. The library was not only a storehouse of texts, but also a vibrant hub for scholars. It attracted luminaries such as Euclid, the father of geometry, Eratosthenes, who calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy, and Archimedes, whose inventions and mathematical insights are still admired today. Here, in shaded courtyards and echoing halls, ideas were debated, discoveries made, and the boundaries of knowledge pushed ever outward. Life in the library was peaceful and contemplative. Scholars would spend their days reading, writing, and discussing philosophy, science, and literature. The gentle sound of the sea outside mingled with the quiet murmur of voices, creating an atmosphere of calm and focus. It was a place where curiosity was cherished and learning was a lifelong pursuit. Tragically, the fate of the library remains one of history's great mysteries. It suffered several calamities: fires, wars, and neglect, until eventually its treasures were lost to time. Yet, the legend of the Library of Alexandria endures, a symbol of humanity's eternal quest for knowledge and understanding. Let this first fact set the tone: a calm, immersive journey through the wonders and stories of our shared past. References for further reading: Britannica, Library of Alexandria World History Encyclopedia, Library of Alexandria. The Sacred Art of Medieval Manuscript Illumination. In the hushed scriptoriums of medieval monasteries, where candlelight flickered against stone walls and the only sounds were the soft scratch of quills and whispered prayers, monks engaged in one of history's most beautiful crafts, the creation of illuminated manuscripts. These weren't merely books, but glowing treasures where text and art merged in perfect harmony. The word illumination itself speaks to their magic. Gold and silver leaf literally illuminated the pages, catching light and casting a gentle radiance that seemed almost divine. From the 6th to the 15th centuries, these handcrafted volumes preserved not only knowledge but also the quiet devotion of their creators. The process was a meditation in patience. Scribes first prepared vellum, fine calfskin stretched and smoothed to perfection. They carefully copied text in precise scripts, leaving spaces for decoration. Then came the illuminator, part artist and part spiritual craftsman, who transformed these gaps into windows of wonder. Initial letters bloomed into intricate gardens of color, margins filled with delicate vines and fantastical creatures, and full-page miniatures told stories in vivid detail. The Book of Kells, created around 800 CE by Irish monks, remains the crown jewel of this art. Its pages swirl with Celtic knots, mythical beasts, and geometric patterns so complex they seem to pulse with life. Each page required weeks of work, every line drawn with reverence and skill. Later, as literacy spread beyond monastery walls, wealthy patrons commissioned personal prayer books called Books of Hours. These intimate volumes guided daily devotions, their calendars adorned with seasonal scenes of medieval life, peasants harvesting grain, nobles hunting, and festivals celebrating the turning year. The invention of the printing press in the 1450s gradually ended this ancient craft, but not before centuries of monks and artisans had created thousands of these luminous books. Today, their pages still glow with the same gentle light, preserving the quiet faith and artistic genius of medieval hands. The gentle rhythms of medieval travel. Contrary to popular belief, medieval Europe was not a world of isolated villages and fearful peasants cowering behind walls. Instead, it was a continent alive with movement, pilgrims walking sacred paths, merchants carrying goods along well-worn routes, and scholars journeying between universities in a surprisingly connected world. Medieval roads, far from being empty wilderness tracks, could be remarkably busy thoroughfares. The great pilgrimage routes such as the Camino de Santiago, leading to northwestern Spain, saw thousands of travelers each year. These pilgrims moved in a gentle procession, their staffs clicking against stone, their voices joining in prayer and song as they walked through changing landscapes. Travel was governed by an intricate code of protection and hospitality. Written laws and unwritten customs safeguarded certain groups. Priests and clergy enjoyed special protection, as did women and the farmers who tended the fields that fed everyone. These rules weren't merely suggestions. They were enforced by local authorities who understood that safe passage meant prosperous trade and peaceful communities. The medieval traveler moved at a deliberate pace, typically covering 20-30 kilometers per day on foot, or slightly more on horseback. This unhurried rhythm allowed for observation and reflection, turning each journey into a meditation on the changing world. Inns and monasteries offered shelter along major routes, creating a network of hospitality that spanned continents. Merchants formed traveling companies for safety and companionship, their pack animals laden with goods from distant lands. Spices from the East, wool from England, and wine from France moved along these ancient highways in a constant, gentle flow of commerce that connected cultures and spread ideas as surely as goods. Universities drew students from across Europe, young men walking hundreds of miles to study in Paris, Bologna, or Oxford. These scholarly pilgrims carried not just books, but ideas, creating an intellectual network that transcended political boundaries. The medieval world was far more mobile and connected than we often imagine, a testament to humanity's enduring desire to explore. The quiet craftsmanship of medieval bookbinding. In the quiet workshops tucked away in the corners of medieval monasteries and later in bustling towns, a delicate art was practiced with patience and reverence. The craft of bookbinding. This was not merely a technical task, but a gentle ritual that preserved the precious knowledge contained within fragile pages. Before the invention of the printing press, books were handwritten manuscripts, often created by monks in scriptoriums. Once the pages were completed, they required careful assembly and protection. Bookbinders took on the responsibility of sewing together gatherings of parchment or vellum, attaching covers made from wood, leather, or fabric, and decorating them with intricate designs. The process began with folding and gathering the sheets into quires, which were then sewn with linen thread onto cords or leather thongs. These cords were laced into wooden boards that formed the covers, providing a sturdy frame. The covers were often wrapped in fine leather, sometimes dyed in rich colors, and adorned with metal clasps, bosses, or even jewels, reflecting the book's importance. Bookbinding was a slow, meticulous craft. Each stitch was placed with care to ensure durability, and the binding had to allow the book to open smoothly without damaging the pages. The bookbinder's tools, awls, needles, presses, and knives were simple but used with great skill. The scent of leather, the feel of parchment, and the quiet rhythm of sewing filled the workshop. Beyond protection, bindings were expressions of art and status. Illuminated manuscripts might be paired with equally elaborate covers, turning books into treasures for monasteries, nobles, and royalty. The bindings told stories of their own, with embossed patterns, heraldic symbols, and inscriptions that connected the book to its owner or place of origin. As the Middle Ages progressed, bookbinding workshops appeared in towns, serving universities, churches, and wealthy patrons. The craft evolved with new materials and techniques, but the essence remained: a patient, loving care for the vessel of knowledge. Today, medieval bindings survive as artifacts of history, offering insight into the cultural and artistic values of their time. The tranquil world of medieval beekeeping. In the peaceful gardens and orchards of medieval Europe, a gentle partnership flourished between humans and one of nature's most industrious creatures, the honeybee. Medieval beekeeping was not merely a practical pursuit, but a quiet art that connected people to the rhythms of the natural world and provided communities with liquid gold. Honey was precious in an age before sugar, serving as the primary sweetener for food and drink. It was also essential for making mead, the fermented honey wine that graced medieval tables during celebrations. Beyond its culinary uses, honey possessed almost mystical properties. It was believed to heal wounds, preserve food, and even ward off evil spirits. Medieval beekeepers, known as bee masters, approached their craft with reverence and patience. They understood that bees were sensitive creatures, responding to the keeper's mood and manner. The old saying, "Tell the bees," reflected the belief that these insects should be informed of important family events, births, deaths, and marriages, lest they abandon their hives in sorrow or confusion. The most common medieval hive was the skep, a dome-shaped basket woven from straw or willow and sealed with clay. These simple structures were placed in quiet corners of gardens, often near flowering herbs and fruit trees. Beekeepers would approach their hives with slow, deliberate movements, sometimes humming softly to calm the bees, believing that gentle sounds kept the colonies peaceful. Harvesting honey was a seasonal ritual, typically performed in late summer when the combs were full. The process required skill and timing. Too early, and the honey would be thin. Too late, and the bees might consume their stores for winter. Beekeepers used smoke from burning herbs to calm the bees, then carefully removed portions of the comb, always leaving enough for the colony to survive the cold months ahead. Monasteries often maintained extensive apiaries, as beeswax was essential for making candles used in religious ceremonies. The pure, clean light of beeswax candles was considered more appropriate for sacred spaces than the smoky tallow alternatives. Monks became skilled beekeepers, viewing their work as a form of prayer and meditation. The medieval relationship with bees was one of mutual respect and gentle cooperation, a reminder that some of life's sweetest rewards come from patient observation and careful tending of the natural world. The gentle craft of medieval glassmaking. In the quiet workshops nestled within medieval towns and monasteries, artisans practiced the delicate and patient craft of glassmaking. This ancient art, passed down through generations, combined skill, creativity, and a deep understanding of natural materials to create objects of both beauty and utility. Medieval glassmakers worked with sand, potash, and lime, carefully melting these ingredients in furnaces that glowed softly in the dim light. The process required precise control of temperature and timing, as the molten glass was shaped by hand or blown into molds. Each piece was unique, reflecting the artisan's touch and the gentle rhythm of the workshop. Glass was used for a variety of purposes, from simple vessels for storing food and drink to intricate stained glass windows that transformed the light of cathedrals into vibrant tapestries of color. These windows were more than decoration. They told stories from scripture and history, inviting contemplation and awe. The creation of stained glass was a collaborative effort. Glassmakers produced colored panes by adding metal oxides to the molten glass, then cutting and assembling them into detailed designs. Painters added fine details with mineral-based paints, which were then fired to fuse the images permanently. The result was a luminous mosaic that bathed sacred spaces in a serene glow. Life in the glassmaking community was marked by patience and precision. Apprentices learned the craft over many years, mastering the delicate balance of heat and form. Workshops were often family-run, with knowledge shared quietly from parent to child. Despite the fragility of their creations, medieval glassmakers contributed enduring beauty to the world. Their work survives in the glowing windows of ancient churches and the delicate vessels preserved in museums, reminding us that even in the humblest of crafts, there is artistry and care. The silent mastery of medieval clockmaking. In the shadowed towers of medieval cathedrals and the quiet chambers of monasteries, a revolutionary craft was slowly taking shape, one that would forever change humanity's relationship with time itself. Medieval clockmaking, emerging in the 13th and 14th centuries, represented not just mechanical innovation, but a profound shift in how people understood the rhythm of daily life. The earliest mechanical clocks were massive, weight-driven machines installed in church towers and public buildings. These were not the precise timepieces we know today, but rather gentle markers of the hours, their deep bells calling communities to prayer, work, and rest. The sound of a medieval clock was not the sharp tick of modern mechanisms, but a slow, measured rhythm that echoed through stone corridors and across cobblestone squares. Medieval clockmakers were part artisan, part mathematician, and part philosopher. They worked with brass, iron, and wood, crafting intricate gear trains and escapement mechanisms by hand. Each component was carefully filed, fitted, and adjusted in workshops filled with the soft sounds of metal on metal and the patient concentration of master craftsmen. The creation of a single clock could take months or even years, requiring not just technical skill, but deep understanding of mechanical principles. The most famous early clockmaker was Giovanni Dondi, who completed his astronomical clock in Padua around 1364. This marvel displayed not only the hours, but also the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, turning timekeeping into a meditation on the cosmos. Such clocks were as much works of art as instruments of precision, their faces adorned with zodiacal signs, and their mechanisms hidden behind ornate casings. Life in medieval clockmaking workshops was governed by the same patience that marked the passage of time itself. Apprentices learned over many years, beginning with simple tasks like filing gear teeth and gradually mastering the complex calculations needed to design escapements and regulate mechanisms. The work required absolute precision. A single misaligned gear could throw off the entire mechanism. These early timepieces transformed medieval society in subtle but profound ways. Monasteries could coordinate their prayers more precisely. Merchants could schedule meetings with greater accuracy, and workers began to think of their day in measured hours, rather than simply following the sun's path across the sky. The legacy of medieval clockmaking extends far beyond mere timekeeping. These patient craftsmen laid the foundation for the mechanical precision that would later drive the Industrial Revolution. proving that even the most complex innovations often begin with quiet dedication and careful hands. The peaceful art of medieval stonework. In the quiet quarries and workshops of medieval Europe, master stonemasons practiced their ancient craft with a patience that matched the enduring nature of their material. These skilled artisans, working with simple tools and profound understanding, shaped the very bones of medieval civilization, from humble parish churches to soaring cathedrals that still inspire awe centuries later. Medieval stonework began in the quarries, where workers carefully extracted blocks of limestone, sandstone, and marble, using wedges, hammers, and chisels. The selection of stone was crucial. Masons learned to read the grain and texture, understanding which blocks would weather well and which might crack under pressure. This knowledge was passed down through generations, creating a quiet tradition of expertise that connected father to son, master to apprentice. The mason's workshop was a place of methodical precision. Here, rough blocks were transformed into precisely cut stones, each shaped to fit perfectly with its neighbors. The tools were simple but effective. Chisels of various sizes, mallets, squares, and compasses. The work required not just physical strength but also geometric understanding, as masons calculated angles and proportions to ensure structural stability. Cathedral building projects could span generations, with entire families dedicating their lives to a single structure. Masons developed specialized skills. Some excelled at carving decorative elements, others at cutting structural stones, and still others at the delicate work of tracery for windows. The atmosphere in these workshops was one of quiet concentration, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of chisels and the occasional consultation between craftsmen. The medieval mason's mark, a simple symbol carved into each stone, served as both signature and quality control. These marks, still visible today in ancient buildings, remind us that each block was shaped by individual hands, each carrying the pride and skill of its creator. The work was slow and deliberate, with masons understanding that their creations would outlast not just their own lives, but countless generations to come. Beyond mere construction, medieval stonemasons were artists and engineers. They created intricate capitals adorned with foliage and figures, carved tympana that told biblical stories, and designed flying buttresses that seemed to defy gravity. Their workshops became centers of innovation, where new techniques were quietly developed and shared among the brotherhood of stone. The legacy of medieval stonework surrounds us still, in the weathered walls of ancient churches and the soaring arches of great cathedrals. These structures stand as monuments to the patient dedication of craftsmen who understood that true mastery comes not from haste, but from the gentle, persistent application of skill over time. The secret language of medieval assassins. In the shadowed alleyways of medieval cities and the hushed corridors of royal courts, a deadly profession operated with chilling precision: the art of assassination. Far from the crude violence of battlefield warfare, medieval assassins were masters of subtlety, poison, and psychological warfare, their methods as refined as they were terrifying. The most famous of these shadowy figures emerged from the mountains of Persia in the 11th century. The Nizari Ismailis, known to their enemies as the assassins, perfected murder as both art and political tool. Led by the enigmatic Hassani Saba from his mountain fortress of Alamut, they struck fear into the hearts of sultans and crusader kings alike. Their weapon of choice was not the sword, but patience, sometimes waiting years for the perfect moment to eliminate their target. These assassins developed an intricate system of codes and signals. A white rose left on a pillow meant death was near. A dagger placed beside a sleeping victim's head served as a final warning. They communicated through seemingly innocent merchants, pilgrims, and scholars, creating a network that spanned from Syria to Persia. Their intelligence gathering was so sophisticated that they often knew their targets' daily routines better than the victims themselves. Medieval European courts harbored their own deadly practitioners. Italian city-states perfected the art of political murder, with families like the Borgias employing poison as casually as others used diplomacy. Cantarella, a mysterious white powder, could be slipped into wine or food, causing a slow, agonizing death that mimicked natural illness. The recipe was so closely guarded that its exact composition remains unknown to this day. The tools of medieval assassination were as varied as they were ingenious. Poisoned rings with hidden compartments, hollow coins containing deadly powders, and even books with pages treated with toxic substances. Some assassins specialized in accidents, loosened saddle straps, weakened bridge planks, or fires that consumed their victims while they slept. What made medieval assassins truly terrifying was not just their methods, but their patience and dedication. They would spend months, even years, infiltrating their target's household, earning trust and waiting for the perfect moment. Some posed as servants, others as trusted advisors, all while planning their victim's demise with cold calculation. The psychological warfare was equally important. The mere reputation of these shadowy figures was often enough to change political decisions. Kings would alter their policies rather than risk the silent blade in the night, making assassination a tool of diplomacy as much as murder. References for further reading: Britannica, The Order of Assassins, World History Encyclopedia, Medieval Assassination Techniques, Cambridge Medieval History, Political Violence in the Middle Ages. The gentle rhythm of medieval bread making. In the pre-dawn darkness of medieval villages, when the world was still wrapped in quiet slumber, the baker's day had already begun. The art of bread making in medieval Europe was not merely a trade, but a sacred responsibility that connected communities to their most fundamental need: daily sustenance. Medieval bakers worked by the light of oil lamps and candles, their hands moving with practiced precision through routines passed down through generations. The process began with the careful preparation of sourdough starter, a living culture that had to be tended daily like a cherished pet. This mother dough was often decades old, its unique flavor profile becoming the signature of each bakery. The grain itself told a story of the seasons. Wheat, when available, produced the finest white bread reserved for the wealthy and special occasions. Rye created the dark, dense loaves that sustained most common folk through long winters. Barley and oats were mixed in during lean times, creating hearty breads that filled empty stomachs and provided lasting energy for hard labor. Kneading was a meditative process, requiring strength and patience. Bakers would work the dough for what seemed like hours, feeling for the perfect texture that would yield a proper rise. The rhythm of kneading became a kind of prayer, hands moving in steady, circular motions while the baker's mind wandered through the quiet thoughts of early morning. Medieval ovens were communal affairs, massive stone structures that retained heat for hours after the fire died down. Villagers would bring their own loaves to be baked, each family's bread marked with distinctive patterns or stamps. The baker's skill lay not just in mixing dough, but in managing the oven's temperature, knowing exactly when to slide in the loaves for perfect results. The scent of baking bread served as the village's gentle alarm clock, drawing people from their homes with promises of warmth and nourishment. In a world without clocks, the baker's schedule marked the rhythm of daily life, his work connecting Earth's bounty to human need through the simple alchemy of flour, water, and time. Guild regulations ensured quality and fairness, with strict penalties for bakers who shortchanged their customers. The size of bread determined proper weights and prices, making the humble baker a crucial figure in maintaining social order and community trust. The hidden world of medieval spies. In the flickering candlelight of medieval courts and the bustling marketplaces of ancient cities, a secret war was being fought, not with swords and armor, but with whispered words, forged documents, and carefully cultivated lies. Medieval espionage was a sophisticated art, practiced by shadowy figures who moved between kingdoms like ghosts, gathering secrets that could topple dynasties. The Byzantine Empire perfected the art of intelligence gathering, creating the world's first organized spy network. Their agents, known as logothetes, operated from Constantinople to the furthest reaches of the known world. They posed as merchants along the Silk Road, as pilgrims on religious journeys, and as scholars in foreign courts. These spies developed an intricate system of coded messages, using everything from the arrangement of market stalls to the colors of clothing to communicate vital intelligence. Medieval spies employed ingenious methods to conceal their communications. Messages were written in invisible ink made from lemon juice or milk, appearing only when heated over a flame. Others used steganography, hiding secret text within seemingly innocent letters by using the first letter of each line to spell out coded instructions. Some agents even tattooed messages on their scalps, allowing their hair to grow over the intelligence before traveling to their destination. The Mongol Empire created perhaps history's most effective intelligence network, the YAM. This system of relay stations and mounted messengers could carry information across vast distances with remarkable speed. Mongol spies, often disguised as traders or diplomats, would infiltrate enemy territories months before military campaigns, mapping defenses and identifying potential collaborators. Their intelligence was so accurate that Mongol armies often knew more about their enemies' capabilities than the enemies knew themselves. Medieval Europe saw the rise of professional spy masters who served multiple kingdoms simultaneously. These figures, like the mysterious master of the networks, who operated across 14th century France, commanded vast webs of informants. They recruited servants in royal households, clerks in government offices, and even priests who could access confessional secrets. Payment was often made through coded transactions, a specific amount of grain purchased, or a particular type of cloth ordered from a merchant. The tools of medieval espionage were as creative as they were deadly. Hollow coins contained secret compartments for messages, while specially designed jewelry could conceal poison or tiny scrolls. Some spies used trained birds to carry intelligence, while others employed a primitive form of cryptography, replacing letters with symbols or numbers that only their handlers could decode. What made medieval spies truly dangerous was their ability to blend seamlessly into society. They might spend years building a false identity, marrying into local families, establishing businesses, and earning the trust of their targets. When the moment came to strike, they were already inside the enemy's most guarded secrets. The quiet dedication of medieval scribes. In the hushed scriptoriums of medieval monasteries and the cramped chambers of urban workshops, scribes bent over their parchment with unwavering concentration, their quills scratching softly in the candlelight. These patient copyists were the guardians of knowledge, preserving the wisdom of ages through the simple act of careful writing. The life of a medieval scribe was one of disciplined routine and meticulous attention to detail. They rose before dawn, said their prayers, and took their places at wooden desks positioned to catch the best natural light. Their tools were simple but precious: quills cut from goose or swan feathers, ink made from oak galls and iron, and sheets of vellum or parchment prepared with painstaking care. Each manuscript was a labor of months or even years. Scribes worked slowly, forming each letter with deliberate precision, following established scripts like Carolingian minuscule or Gothic textura. They counted lines, measured margins, and planned layouts with mathematical precision. A single mistake could ruin hours of work, so concentration was absolute, broken only by the gentle tolling of monastery bells marking the hours for prayer. The physical demands were considerable. Scribes developed distinctive postures from hunching over their work, and their hands often bore permanent ink stains. Eye strain was common, and many suffered from what we would now recognize as repetitive stress injuries. Yet they persevered, driven by the knowledge that their work preserved civilization itself. Beyond mere copying, scribes were often scholars in their own right. They corrected errors in ancient texts, added marginal notes with explanations, and sometimes inserted their own observations. These glosses became valuable sources of medieval thought, revealing how each generation understood and interpreted the past. The scriptorium was a place of quiet community. Scribes worked in companionable silence, sharing materials and expertise. Senior scribes guided novices, teaching not just penmanship but also Latin grammar, abbreviation systems, and the art of book layout. The soft sounds of their work, the scratch of quills, the rustle of parchment, the occasional whispered consultation, created a peaceful atmosphere of shared purpose. As the medieval period progressed, lay scribes joined monastic copyists, working in urban scriptoriums to meet growing demand for books. Universities, courts, and wealthy merchants all required manuscripts, creating a thriving industry of professional copyists. who carried on the ancient tradition with the same patient dedication. The peaceful art of medieval gardening. In the sheltered courtyards of medieval monasteries and the walled enclosures behind manor houses, gardeners tended their plots with the same devotion that monks offered in prayer. Medieval gardens were not merely sources of food and medicine, but sanctuaries of order and beauty in a world often marked by uncertainty and hardship. The medieval garden was a carefully planned space, divided into distinct areas, each serving specific purposes. The kitchen garden, or hortus, provided vegetables and herbs for daily meals. Onions, leeks, cabbages, and peas grew in neat rows, tended by hands that understood the subtle rhythms of planting and harvest. Nearby, the physic garden cultivated healing plants, chamomile for soothing stomachs, lavender for calming nerves, and dozens of other herbs whose properties had been carefully observed and recorded over generations. Monastic gardens followed the rule of Saint Benedict, which emphasized the dignity of manual labor. Monks would spend hours each day working the soil, their movements slow and contemplative. They developed sophisticated techniques for crop rotation, composting, and seed saving, understanding that the garden's health depended on patient observation and gentle care rather than force or haste. The tools of medieval gardening were simple but effective: wooden spades, iron hoes, and wicker baskets for gathering produce. Gardeners learned to read the weather, planting by the phases of the moon and harvesting at optimal times. They saved seeds from the best plants, gradually improving their varieties through careful selection over many seasons. Water was precious and carefully managed. Gardens featured wells, cisterns, and channels that directed rainwater to where it was most needed. The sound of trickling water became part of the garden's peaceful atmosphere, along with the buzzing of bees and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Medieval gardeners also cultivated beauty alongside utility. Flower gardens, though smaller than their practical counterparts, provided roses for religious ceremonies, lilies for symbolic purposes, and sweet-smelling herbs that could be strewn on floors or used to scent linens. These gardens were places of quiet contemplation, where the gardener could find peace in the simple act of nurturing life. The knowledge of gardening was passed down through generations, from master to apprentice, in a tradition that valued patience, observation, and respect for the natural world. Each garden was a small paradise, carefully tended by hands that understood that true abundance comes not from taking, but from giving back to the earth. The gentle craft of medieval candle making. In the dim workshops of medieval towns and the quiet chambers of monasteries, candle makers practiced their ancient craft with the patience of those who understood that light itself was precious. Before the age of electricity, these artisans were the guardians of illumination, creating the flickering flames that pushed back darkness and made evening activities possible. Medieval candles were far more than simple sources of light. They were markers of time, symbols of devotion, and essential tools for daily life. The wealthy burned beeswax candles, which gave off a clean, sweet scent and steady flame. The poor made do with tallow candles, crafted from animal fat, which smoked and sputtered but provided affordable illumination for humble homes. The candle-making process was a meditation in repetition. Artisans would begin by preparing their materials, purifying beeswax by melting and straining it, or rendering tallow from sheep or beef fat. Wicks were carefully prepared from cotton or linen fibers, twisted to the proper thickness to ensure an even burn. Too thin, and the flame would gutter; too thick, and it would smoke excessively. The most common method was dipping, where the candlemaker would repeatedly immerse the wick into molten wax, allowing each layer to cool before adding the next. This process required dozens of dips to build up a candle of proper thickness, each one adding to the gentle rhythm of the workshop. The artisan's hands moved with practiced precision, knowing exactly how long to hold each candle in the wax and when to move to the next. Monasteries were particularly skilled in candle making, as their religious services required hundreds of candles throughout the year. Monks would work in silent concentration, their movements synchronized with the prayers that marked the hours. The creation of Paschal candles for Easter required special skill, as these massive candles needed to burn steadily throughout the long vigil services. Seasonal rhythms governed the candle makers' work. Autumn was the busiest time, as households prepared for the long winter nights ahead. The workshop would fill with the warm scent of melting wax and the quiet sounds of craftsmen at work, creating the light that would sustain communities through the darkest months. The finished candles were more than commodities. They were symbols of hope and continuity, small flames that connected medieval people to the eternal light that no darkness could extinguish. The tranquil art of medieval tapestry weaving. In the quiet chambers of medieval castles and the workshops of skilled artisans, weavers created some of history's most magnificent works of art through the patient craft of tapestry making. These weren't merely decorative hangings, but storytelling masterpieces that transformed cold stone walls into windows of color, warmth, and narrative beauty. Medieval tapestries served multiple purposes beyond decoration. They provided insulation against drafty castle walls, could be easily transported when nobles moved between residences, and displayed wealth and status to visitors. The most famous surviving example, the Bayeux Tapestry, chronicles the Norman conquest of 1066 in vivid detail, serving as both historical record and artistic achievement. The creation of a tapestry was an extraordinarily time-consuming process. Weavers worked on vertical looms, building the image row by row from the bottom up. They used wool for the main structure, with silk and metallic threads added for highlights and fine details. The most skilled artisans could weave only a few square inches per day, meaning a large tapestry might take years to complete. The workshop atmosphere was one of quiet concentration and collaboration. Master weavers worked alongside apprentices, sharing techniques passed down through generations. They followed detailed cartoons, full-size drawings that served as guides for the complex designs. The soft sounds of the loom, the gentle conversation between workers, and the gradual emergence of images created a peaceful environment where art and craft merged seamlessly. Color was achieved through carefully prepared dyes made from natural materials, madder root for reds, woad for blues, and weld for yellows. These colors had to be mixed and applied with precision, as mistakes were nearly impossible to correct without unraveling significant portions of work. The weavers developed an intimate knowledge of how different threads would interact, creating subtle gradations and optical effects through their careful placement. The subjects of medieval tapestries ranged from religious scenes to courtly romances, hunting expeditions to allegorical representations of virtues and vices. Each tapestry was a collaborative effort between patron, designer, and weaver, resulting in works that reflected both artistic vision and technical mastery. Today, surviving medieval tapestries continue to inspire wonder with their intricate detail and enduring beauty, testament to the patient dedication of craftspeople who understood that true artistry cannot be rushed, only carefully cultivated through time and devotion. The serene world of medieval falconry. In the misty dawns of medieval Europe, when dew still clung to castle battlements and the world was wrapped in morning silence, nobles and their falconers would venture forth to practice one of the most refined arts of the age, falconry. This ancient partnership between human and bird of prey was far more than mere hunting. It was a gentle dance of trust, patience, and mutual respect that elevated both participants. Medieval falconry was governed by strict social hierarchies that mirrored the feudal system itself. The magnificent gyrfalcon was reserved for kings, while earls might fly the noble peregrine falcon. Knights carried goshawks, and even clergy had their place in this avian aristocracy, with bishops traditionally flying sparrowhawks. Each bird required different techniques, different temperaments, and different levels of skill to master. The training of a falcon was a process that demanded extraordinary patience and understanding. Falconers would spend weeks simply accustoming their birds to human presence, speaking in soft, consistent tones, and moving with deliberate calm. The process began with manning, teaching the bird to remain comfortable on the falconer's gloved fist. This could take days or weeks, with the falconer sometimes staying awake for hours to maintain the bird's attention and build trust. The medieval falconer's equipment was both practical and beautiful. Leather jesses secured the bird's legs, while tiny bells allowed the falconer to track the bird's location during flight. Hoods, often decorated with colorful plumes and intricate stitching, kept the falcon calm by blocking its vision. The falconer's glove, thick and reinforced, protected the hand while providing a comfortable perch for razor-sharp talons. Training sessions took place in quiet meadows and open fields, where falconer and bird worked together in harmony. The process was gradual, first teaching the bird to return to the fist for food, then to fly increasingly longer distances, and finally to hunt in partnership with its human companion. The relationship was built on mutual benefit. The falcon received regular meals and protection, while the falconer gained a hunting partner of unmatched skill and grace. The hunt itself was a spectacle of coordinated beauty. Riders would move slowly across the countryside, their trained birds scanning the sky and ground for prey. When quarry was spotted, the falcon would be released, soaring high above before diving with breathtaking speed and precision. The successful hunt was celebrated not with loud cheers but with quiet satisfaction and gentle praise for the bird's performance. Medieval falconry manuals, such as Frederick II's The Art of Hunting with Birds, reveal the deep knowledge and respect these practitioners held for their avian partners. They understood bird behavior, anatomy, and psychology with scientific precision, developing techniques that remain largely unchanged. The quiet mastery of medieval metalworking. In the glowing forges of medieval workshops, where the rhythmic hammering of metal on anvil created a steady heartbeat of industry, blacksmiths and metalworkers practiced their ancient craft with skills passed down through countless generations. These artisans were the backbone of medieval society, creating everything from horseshoes and nails to intricate armor and delicate jewelry. The medieval forge was a place of controlled fire and patient transformation. Blacksmiths would begin their day before dawn, coaxing their furnaces to life with carefully arranged charcoal and gentle bellows work. The temperature had to be precisely controlled. Too hot, and the metal would burn. Too cool, and it wouldn't achieve the malleability needed for shaping. This knowledge came only through years of experience, reading the color of heated iron like a language written in flame. The tools of the trade were simple but effective. Hammers of various weights, tongs for gripping hot metal, and anvils whose surfaces had been worn smooth by generations of use. Each piece of equipment was carefully maintained, as a blacksmith's livelihood depended on the precision of his tools. The workshop filled with the scent of hot metal, coal smoke, and the occasional hiss of red-hot iron meeting water in the quenching tub. Medieval metalworkers specialized in different aspects of their craft. Some focused on agricultural tools, plowshares, sickles, and hoes that would feed entire communities. Others created weapons and armor, understanding that a knight's life might depend on the quality of their work. The most skilled artisans crafted decorative items, candlesticks, crosses, and ornamental ironwork that adorned churches and noble homes. The process of creating a piece required patience and planning. Iron had to be heated, hammered, reheated, and shaped repeatedly until it achieved the desired form. Complex items like chainmail required thousands of individual rings, each one carefully forged, shaped, and linked by hand. A single suit of mail could take months to complete, representing hundreds of hours of meticulous work. Apprentices learned through observation and gradual participation, starting with simple tasks like maintaining the fire and organizing tools. Over years, they would progress to basic forging, eventually mastering the subtle art of reading metal's behavior under heat and pressure. The relationship between master and apprentice was built on mutual respect and the understanding that metalworking was as much art as craft. The quiet rituals of medieval bathing. Contrary to popular belief, medieval people did not live in perpetual filth, but rather followed bathing customs that were both practical and deeply rooted in social tradition. The medieval approach to cleanliness was far more nuanced than modern stereotypes suggest, involving public bathhouses, private washing rituals, and seasonal cleansing practices that reflected both necessity and luxury. Medieval bathhouses, known as stews, were common in most European cities and towns. These establishments served as social centers where people gathered not just to bathe but to conduct business, share news, and enjoy communal relaxation. The bathhouses were typically divided by gender, with specific hours designated for men and women. The atmosphere was surprisingly refined, with attendants providing towels, soap made from animal fat and ash, and even light refreshments. Private bathing was a more elaborate affair, reserved for special occasions and the wealthy. Wooden tubs would be lined with linen cloths and filled with heated water, often scented with herbs like lavender, rosemary, or mint. The process was ritualistic. Servants would carry buckets of hot water from the kitchen, test the temperature, and assist with washing. Rose petals might be scattered on the water's surface, and the bather would soak leisurely while enjoying wine or conversation. Daily cleansing focused on the hands, face, and mouth, rather than full-body immersion. People would wash their hands before and after meals using ewers and basins, often with scented water. Teeth were cleaned with cloths and herbal powders, and breath was freshened with mint or fennel seeds. Hair was regularly combed and braided, with oils applied to keep it manageable and pleasant smelling. Seasonal bathing patterns followed practical considerations. Spring brought thorough cleansing after winter's confinement, while summer allowed for more frequent washing in streams and rivers. Autumn preparations included preserving soap and gathering herbs for winter use. Even in the coldest months, people maintained basic hygiene through careful washing of exposed body parts and regular changing of undergarments. The medieval understanding of cleanliness was closely tied to health and social status. Physicians recommended bathing for certain ailments, while religious authorities viewed cleanliness as a virtue. The wealthy displayed their status through elaborate bathing rituals and expensive soaps, while common folk maintained dignity through simpler but consistent cleansing practices. References for further reading: World History Encyclopedia, Medieval Hygiene and Bathing, Britannica, Daily Life in Medieval Europe. The peaceful art of medieval wool processing. In the rolling hills of medieval England and the quiet valleys of Flanders, the gentle rhythm of wool processing created the foundation of Europe's most important industry. From the soft bleating of sheep in green pastures to the steady click of spinning wheels in cottage windows, wool production was a symphony of patient labor that connected rural communities to distant markets. The medieval wool trade began with the careful tending of sheep, whose fleeces would become the raw material for Europe's textile industry. Shepherds moved their flocks through seasonal pastures, understanding that the quality of wool depended on the animal's diet and care. Spring shearing was a community event, with skilled workers using sharp shears to remove fleeces in single pieces, their movements quick but gentle to avoid injuring the animals. Once collected, the raw wool underwent a series of transformations that required both skill and patience. Women would sort the fleeces by quality, separating the finest fibers from coarser material. The wool was then washed in running streams. The lanolin and dirt gradually worked out through repeated rinsing and gentle agitation. This process could take days, with workers standing knee-deep in cold water, their hands moving rhythmically through the floating fleece. Carding came next, a meditative process where workers used paddle-shaped brushes studded with metal teeth to align the wool fibers. The gentle scraping motion gradually transformed tangled fleece into smooth, parallel strands, ready for spinning. The sound of carding filled medieval cottages, a soft, rhythmic whisking that became the background music of daily life. The spinning wheel, introduced in the 13th century, revolutionized wool processing while maintaining its contemplative nature. Women would sit for hours, their feet working the treadle, while their hands guided wool into thread. The wheel's gentle hum became a constant companion, allowing for conversation and storytelling while productive work continued. Spinning was often done communally, with neighbors gathering to share news and wisdom while their wheels turned in harmony. Weaving transformed the spun thread into cloth, a process that required both technical skill and artistic vision. Weavers worked at large looms, their hands moving in complex patterns to create everything from simple homespun to elaborate tapestries. The rhythm of the loom, the throw of the shuttle, the beat of the reed, the lifting of the heddles, created a music all its own. The finished cloth would be fulled, a process where it was soaked and beaten to shrink and thicken the fibers. This work was often done by fullers, who used their feet to trample the cloth in troughs of water, sometimes for hours at a time. The gentle pressure and constant motion gradually transformed loose weave into dense, weather-resistant fabric. Thank you for joining us on tonight's journey through history. I hope these gentle stories have brought you both knowledge and peace as we've explored the fascinating world of our ancestors together. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please consider subscribing to Nightly Knowledge and giving this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us continue bringing you these carefully researched, soothing stories from the past. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Which historical period would you like us to explore next? Your suggestions help shape our future episodes. Sweet dreams, and remember, every night brings a new story, and every story connects us to the remarkable tapestry of human experience. Until next time, this is Nightly Knowledge, where history whispers its secrets in the gentle darkness.